The real history of King Arthur and the Knights, legend versus reality, King Arthur. A name that evokes images of shining armor, chivalrous knights, magical swords, and a round table where legends were born. For centuries, stories of Arthur and his knights have captivated the world. But how much of it is real? Was there truly a King Arthur who ruled over Camelot and led the Knights of the Round Table? Or is Arthur merely a myth, crafted by storytellers over time? To uncover the truth, we must dive into ancient texts, sift through archaeological findings, and separate medieval romance from historical fact. Because the story of King Arthur isn't just about one man. It's about how myths are born, evolve, and endure. It's about our human need for heroes, ideals, and the idea of a utopian past where justice ruled and valor was currency. 1. The origins of the Arthurian legend. The earliest references to Arthur appear in Welsh and Breton poetry from the 6th to 9th centuries. These texts portray Arthur not as a king, but as a warrior or military leader. In Historia Brittonum, circa 830 AD, a text attributed to Nennius, Arthur is described as a dux bellorum, a war chief who fought and won 12 battles against the Saxons. The most famous of these battles, the Battle of Mount Badon, is credited with halting the Saxon advance into Britain for a generation. Another early source is the 10th century Annales Cambriae, which mentions Arthur and a mysterious battle at Mount Badon around the year 516 AD. It also references the Battle of Camlin, supposedly Arthur's final battle, where he and his nemesis Mordred fell. Yet despite these mentions, no single document from that era definitively proves Arthur existed as a king. The stories are rich with heroic imagery, but historically sparse. Much of the Arthurian material was transmitted orally in the early Middle Ages. These tales were shaped by Celtic tradition, where warrior heroes, magical elements, and epic battles were common themes. In these versions, Arthur is less a king and more a hero of folklore, sometimes even with supernatural attributes. 2. Geoffrey of Monmouth and the birth of a legend. The 12th century brought a major shift in Arthur's image. Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae, History of the Kings of Britain, written around 1136, transformed Arthur into a grand king, son of Uther Pendragon, and ruler of a mighty empire stretching from Britain to Rome. It's here that Arthur becomes the figure we recognize today, a noble monarch leading an enlightened kingdom. Geoffrey's Arthur was not just a warrior but a civilizer, a just ruler who conquered Rome and brought peace to Britain. This fantastical version became the foundation for most later Arthurian romances. Geoffrey also introduced Merlin the Wizard and Arthur's Queen Guinevere, expanding the narrative scope. Although Geoffrey claimed to be drawing from an ancient British source, no such document has ever been found. Most scholars now agree he invented or heavily embellished much of the narrative. Nevertheless, Geoffrey's work spread rapidly through medieval Europe, laying the groundwork for the vast literary tradition that followed. The idea of the Round Table, a symbol of equality among knights, appeared in French and English romances in the late 12th and 13th centuries. Writers like Chrétien de Troyes added key elements to the myth. Sir Lancelot, the quest for the Holy Grail, courtly love, and the notion of chivalric brotherhood. Each knight was depicted with distinct virtues and faults. Sir Gawain represented loyalty and bravery. Lancelot was the tragic lover. Galahad was the pure-hearted, and Percival symbolized innocence and the seeker of truth. The Round Table itself may have been a metaphor for the ideal of a just society where no man sat above another. These knights were ideals of chivalry and honor, yet they were likely inspired by real warrior bands or court retainers that served Celtic or early medieval kings. The Round Table, if it ever existed, may not have been literal, but rather allegorical. Still, this motif of chivalric unity influenced European ideals of knighthood for centuries. Historians debate whether Arthur was a historical figure. Some believe he may have been based on a composite of several war leaders who resisted Anglo-Saxon invasions after the Roman withdrawal from Britain. Figures such as Ambrosius Aurelianus and Riothamus have been suggested as possible inspirations. Sites like Cadbury Castle in Somerset and Tintagel in Cornwall have been suggested as potential Camelots due to archaeological findings of high-status buildings dating to the right era. At Tintagel, remains of a significant post-Roman settlement have been found, including imported Mediterranean pottery and signs of literacy and trade. Yet, no direct evidence ties these places to Arthur. Others argue that Arthur never existed, and is purely a literary and mythological construct. His story, they claim, served as a political and cultural symbol during times of national crisis. For example, during the Norman Conquest and the 100 Years' War, Arthurian legend was revived to inspire unity and nationalism. Regardless of historical accuracy, the Arthurian legend became a pillar of British literature. From Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur in the 15th century to Tennyson's Idylls of the King in the 19th, the myth evolved with each generation, reflecting the values and dreams of its time. Malory's work, written while he was imprisoned during the Wars of the Roses, emphasized knightly honor and betrayal, echoing the chaotic politics of his era. Tennyson, writing in the Victorian age, used Arthurian myth to explore morality, faith, and the tensions between duty and desire.